Recently, on the 22nd of September 2022, it was announced by Google that Stadia will be shut down on the 18th of January 2023. Google's cloud gaming service will be shut down for good. The service launched back in November of 2019, giving the system a lifespan of 3 years, 1 month and 30 days, or 1,156 days, whatever you prefer. And as bad as that sounds, it's actually not all that bad. Heck, depending on how you look at it, the TurboGrafx 16 barely lasted longer than 4 years itself. But still, it's not great. To put it in comparison, this thing lasted about the same amount of time as the Sega CD/Mega CD. But then again, these dates are based on when a console is released, all the way up until the final piece of official software is released for said console. And considering the Google Stadia store is already shut, that puts Google Stadia roughly between a Nokia Engage and a 3DO. Yep, that's where we are, people. So what the hell happened here? Are we destined to only have Microsoft, Sony and Nintendo for the rest of time? How can one of the biggest companies in the entire world not release a successful gaming platform? How did they release something so terribly bad? And worse still, how did they manage to cock up its end of days too? Well, it's been a long time coming, and it's 100% worth talking about. Think of it like this: Google is the biggest player to drop from the video game space since Sega? But unlike Sega's swan song, that did have a reasonably impressive launch and more importantly did leave a positive impact on gaming as a whole, Stadia didn't. The news of Stadia officially shutting down wasn't a shock. In fact, upon hearing it, the entire world in unison gave it a collective, "Oh, alright." And no doubt continued scrolling on past that headline as they pinched out the last of their morning dump. But again, it is worth talking about how a company that was at one point the wealthiest in the ring failed so hard. This is the detailed rise and fall of Google Stadia. Welcome to Slope's Game Room. Our story starts all the way back to the distant date of July of 2018. When rumours began circulating that Google's Yeti, a brand new streaming gaming service, was being tested by the search engine giants for either a Google Chromecast or, more likely, some kind of new gaming device, as reports were unaware on how a controller would ever connect up to a Chromecast in its current state.
Miriam, Quiris!
VP of Product Management and VP of Engineering over at Google were the guys in charge of this new venture, and they had reportedly been working on the project for 2 years up to this point, with very successful results. In fact, Google was so confident with what they were able to achieve that they almost released the Yeti into the wild a whole 1 year prior, in 2017, but for unknown reasons, it was delayed. Perhaps it was because they didn't have the muscle to bring this thing to market. Enter Phil Harrison, ex-executive of Sony PlayStation's division for 15 years and 3 years over at Xbox. He put out the following tweet in January of 2018.
Excited to be able to share that today I've started a new role as Vice President and GM of Google and relocating back to California.
Now come on, let's give credit where credit is due. A brand new gaming streaming platform so good that Google could have released it a year prior and now is being marketed by a key member of 2/3 of the competition's success. They both launched without any hiccups, right? Running on October 1st, 2018, and Google officially announcing Project Stream and showing off some rather impressive, supposed real gameplay capture of the next Assassin's Creed game running at 1080p and 60 frames per second. It was said in a blog directly from Google itself that a small number of beta testers would be able to try out this soon-to-be-released game in only 4 days' time, playing directly from a Chrome browser on any laptop or desktop they desired. Surely a game like Assassin's Creed is the perfect type of game to show off Project Stream, a game that needs almost instantaneous, button to TV inputs, aka virtually no lag, but it's not like you're playing a first-person shooter or a competitive fighting game here, is it? Right? Exactly. Assassin's Creed was the perfect game series to show off what Google's Project Stream could do. And just to put everyone's mind at ease anyway, Google stated in an IGN preview that it was only when they could play Doom on a standard broadband line at a random engineer's house, apparently something they were able to achieve again a year prior, when they knew that Google's Project Stream was finally able to launch. Google put out the feelers for beta testers and a crazy amount of people signed up, primarily because they were going to get a free copy of Odyssey. No, unfortunately, not that Odyssey. And straight away, the reports started to come in.
Testing out Project Stream during the beta, I came to understand why Google felt able to drop a major project like this out of seemingly nowhere. Because playing a game as intensive as the new Assassin's Creed felt great, and might even be the ideal way to play on PC.
Said Polygon, and
there's something a little funky about playing a game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey in your internet browser. It almost feels obscene, like you're getting away with something that shouldn't be legal. Google's Project Stream might have some obstacles on the way to global dominance, but it's still pretty damn impressive. Said
Kotaku. It's fair to say that people were impressed. Not everyone reported back perfect lagless gaming experiences, and the odd report stated that the occasional drop away from 60 frames a second or even a major drop away from 1080p would occur when the internet connection was taken up by another downloader on the same line. But from my research, everyone was more than happy and shockingly impressed that you could play these top-tier graphical demanding games in a freaking browser. And of course, with so much positive feedback, there was only one more thing to do.
Please welcome to the stage the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you all for joining us. I suppose I should start out with a confession. I'm actually not a big gamer, though I do play FIFA 19 quite a bit and really enjoy how immersive it is. I also play Ashes cricket quite a bit. And for those of you who are wondering what cricket is, it's kind of like baseball, but better.
What? Sorry about this, guys.
So now we are focused on our next big effort, which is to build a game platform for everyone. And when we say for everyone, we really mean it. It's one of our most cherished values as a company. Be it Android or Chrome or AI, we are dead serious about making technology accessible for everyone. But if you think about games, there are a lot of barriers for users to play high-end games. Beautiful graphics really need high-end consoles or PCs. And games don't have instant access. Think about the way the web works. You can easily share a link, and it works seamlessly. We want games to feel that way too. Instantly enjoyable with access for everyone.
Yep, less than a year later, Google Stream became Google Stadia. Lots of big stats, lots of big numbers, lots of big shiny promises were announced at the Stadia GDC 2019 conference, and, well, not to get ahead of ourselves here, guys, but if this was exactly how Google Stadia worked, then I think it's fair to say that it would still be around. Just imagine a service that lets you play with any controller you want. A service that doesn't require you to spend months of rent on actually buying a console to play those games. A service that provides top-tier graphics. A service that lets you play games directly after watching a trailer through the end cards on a YouTube video within only 5 seconds. The crowd loved that feature.
Imagine you were watching games on YouTube. and you discover the latest Assassin's Creed Odyssey trailer on Ubisoft's official channel on YouTube. You will notice the Play Now button. By simply clicking on that button, the player is brought directly into the game in a browser in as quick as 5 seconds. With no download, no patch, no update, and no install. Stadia offers instant access to play.
And most importantly, no lag. Perfect! For the right type of gamer, at least. If you were someone like this old school hibbity-hobbity loser that still buys physical music, Blu-rays and games, then it probably wouldn't be for you. However, for the Netflix generation, the sort of people that consume only what the big dogs allowed on their streaming services like Spotify, Amazon Prime, and in the gaming sphere, services like PlayStation Now in exchange for a small monthly fee, kinda like Xbox Game Pass, then it would be for you. And yes, I know that Xbox Game Pass isn't really comparable, as that service requires you to download the games and Stadia doesn't. I just made the comparison because it's a monthly fee that you pay to play games. Loads of people love to do that already, so it's not a million miles away from Stadia. You see, in the beginning, everyone was impressed. Sure, some of us had our concerns, but we all left that same Future of Gaming conference that Google just held with the exact same impression.
Essentially, Google wants to build the Netflix of video games.
Google unveiling a new platform many are referring to as a Netflix of gaming that could shake up the video game industry.
Are you getting the impression that this is being looked at as the Netflix of gaming? And look, even though I am someone with an unhealthy obsession with collecting physical games, and obviously, you know, something like this, if successful, could potentially kill that market, I gotta admit, I was very interested to see where this would go. The problem was, the messaging was just so confusing. Even people inside of Google that work directly with Google didn't understand the messaging. Take MatPat from Game Theory, for example. He was sponsored to be at that conference on March 19th. And then 2 days later, when discussing his involvement on GT Live, he came to the same conclusion as everyone else.
Let's rewind, because I don't think we've done a really good job of explaining this, right? Which is the fact that Stadia is not a console. It's not a, it requires a complete rethinking of what it means to play a game. First off, like they even said, like you're not buying anything. Like at most you're either buying like, I probably see it being a subscription service similar to Netflix.
Sure I feel
like it kind of has to be.
Service, but people are afraid it's going to cost like $50.
This is someone who has been working directly with Google on this bad boy. If he thinks it's a streaming service, it's a bloody streaming service. You ain't gonna need anything. You pay a small monthly fee, however much that is, and then you can just play games in a browser, on your phone, on a tablet, wherever, and that is it. Everyone had the exact same mindset, and Google didn't fight that. They just let it sizzle until it eventually became the facts, as far as we were concerned. Heck, this vision was so clear that the Financial Times reported that Nintendo and Sony shares had dropped by almost 4%, as investors were obviously suckered into this new hardware future mindset that Google had just laid out. And then 3 months later, we got to see our first of Google's version of a Nintendo Direct. And this is where it all went pear-shaped.
Hi, I'm Phil. Thanks so much for joining us today for the first Stadia Connect. This series gives you a look at Stadia news, events, new titles, bonus features, and more. We'll be posting these Stadia Connect videos from time to time to bring you the latest from Google straight to all of you, the players. We've got a bunch of exciting news to share with you today, so let's get started.
I didn't add that in, guys. The original stream was a little bit hard to find, and this is one of the ones that GameSpot put up, but still, it's pretty funny. Let's watch it again.
We've got a bunch of exciting news to share with you today, so let's get started.
The Connect reconfirmed that the service would work on TV, desktop, laptop, tablet, and Pixel smartphones, as in Google Pixel smartphones. Android and iOS users will need to wait a while. Baldur's Gate was officially announced. This game is still in early access, by the way, so it's essentially never coming out on the Stadia. Lol, lol, lol. They went into detail explaining how Stadia would still work even if you have a significantly lower than recommended connection speed, as Google's data centers will adjust the quality of the game to fit your connection. Regardless of what you have, this service can apparently
transmit the live instance from the data center to your screen faster than your eye is transmitting those images to your brain.
Oh, really? Yeah, perhaps if you're playing in here. You had a load of game announcements, virtually all of them third party, besides Stadia exclusive GYLT, which we will get to in more detail in a bit. And they explained that the best way to play all of this was via their own controller, but you could use any. Yeah, fair enough on that one. However, the biggest mic drop to come from this first ever Google Connect came from its price and how the thing was gonna be released. Turns out, if you want to play this system from the get-go, you need to pay $129.99. This will give you a limited edition coloured controller, a Chromecast Ultra, 3 months of a Stadia Pro subscription, usually $9.99 a month, and more importantly, access to actually use this service from the beginning, turning what was a hardware-free service into a service that requires hardware from the get-go. And extra controllers would sell for $69.99 if you fancied budding up with a friend. Well worth it because this colour is apparently called Wasabi. Okay, if that isn't bad enough, that $9.99 you was expecting to pay for the Netflix of gaming isn't actually for the Netflix of gaming. It's more for the Netflix Ultra HD version of gaming, and you're still going to need to buy the games. Are you confused? Yeah, everyone was. In order to actually play these games in 4K as originally advertised, and not just 1080p like some sort of peasant, not only did you need to pay this monthly fee, but you also need to actually buy the game too. Games that for the most part are already available on everything else. And boy oh boy were they not cheap on Stadia. The backlash that Google got for this was horrible. Fans that had been following this with intrigue had, in a lot of instances, fallen off the bandwagon. I was someone that already had my concerns with the streaming service, and again, being someone that's all about physical media and more so exclusive games, of which Google Stadia only had one, it's fair to say that I wasn't exactly the target audience. Then, all of a sudden, I got an email. Did I want to get myself a Founders Edition of Google Stadia in exchange for a couple of streams? Okay. And here we are, the official Slopes Game Room Founders Edition. It's just written in silver pen, guys. If you have one, you can literally make your own special edition too. Look, I have no idea why they chose me. My content primarily focuses on retro games, and yeah, Google Stadia didn't have any retro games. And after speaking to some much bigger channels that tend to focus more on a younger audience, which would definitely be more Stadia's target market, they couldn't work it out either. Regardless, I ain't complaining. I went ahead with it anyway and unboxed the thing, as that was literally all I could do, as the service wasn't even live when I got the controller. But eventually, when the time came to actually play on this thing, I plugged it in, connected online, put in the Founders Edition code to get 3 months of Stadia Pro, and because that only gave me access to games that I didn't really have any interest in playing, I went off and purchased the only exclusive for the system with my own money, that being Tequila Works GYLT, and after completing it a few times, one of which was on a live stream, what was my opinion on all of this? Well, it was surprisingly really good. In short, Stadia delivered where it mattered the most. I had live chat on Discord going, I was streaming the game live, and of course, I was playing the game, and it played almost perfectly fine. Sadly, I do still feel like this perfectly above average game did have a little bit too much weight on its shoulders, being that it was the only exclusive and 100% not a system seller. Plus, at £30, yeah, that's way too expensive for a 3-hour Alan Wake clone, but still, the experience, money aside, was completely fine. Plus, it helped that it was actually a pretty good game, and a game that didn't require instantaneous lag-free controls. Kinda like Assassin's Creed. In other words, it's not exactly a game that's good to test lag. Thankfully, I did have one of those lag testing games as part of the Stadia subscription service, and almost instantly, I did notice the issues.
Yeah, look, I am seeing issues here. I would say that's actually on bad for a game like this.
As thankful as I was that I got to experience Stadia on day 1 and day 0, that infrequent laggy experience along with the terrible pricing scheme that offered games like Tomb Raider for around about £50, whereas the competition offered it for around about £15, was only part of my and Google's problems. Turns out that the majority of those features they talked about in those early connects were missing at launch. 4K was only available via the Chromecast Ultra. Yes, even if you paid for Pro, you still was only going to be getting a 1080p experience in a Chromecast browser. And technically, 4K didn't really look like 4K. The best way to explain it is it's like you're watching a YouTube video rather than playing direct from your own system, unsurprisingly, because that's simply what it was doing. It was just not as crisp, and people that upgraded their rigs to be 4K beforehand instantly recognized this. And by the way, if you had a Chromecast Ultra already, you couldn't play games on it. Only the Chromecast Ultras that actually came with the controllers were able to play these games. Everyone else that already forked a stupid amount of money out for these Chromecast Ultras, you're gonna need an update. And the update wasn't available yet. The free-to-play package wasn't available for a further 5 months. On top of that, the controller was only wireless on the Chromecast Ultra. Everyone else had to keep it plugged into their PC, phone or tablet, meaning that if you wanted to stream in 4K, well, you simply couldn't unless you had some kind of expensive copyright protecting workaround due to the Chromecast Ultra, a device primarily used to stream Netflix and what have you, blocking the ability for obvious reasons. Google Pixel was the only phone that allowed for mobile phone gaming with Stadia. Sorry, Android and iOS users. In fact, iOS users had to wait over a year for it to work on those platforms. Features like play the game directly from a YouTube video wasn't available at launch and never did become available. The ability to share the exact moment you were in a game to friends for them to be able to jump in and have a go also wasn't available. Getting streamers to join into your game wasn't available. The ability to see other gameplay in your screen wasn't available. You couldn't buy games online in a browser. You needed to download the app on your phone, buy it from that device, and then go back to your browser in order to play them, and yes, that includes non-Pixel phones. Your friends list didn't work correctly on launch, which also means that the Buddy Pass program that allowed paying Stadia gamers to invite non-paying Stadia users to join in for free for a limited time also didn't work. To say this thing was a massive failure on launch is the understatement of the century. Sure, most people got a pretty good gaming experience as long as they weren't playing anything too competitive and they were playing on the funkiest, chunkiest fibre broadband line going. But considering this thing launched with so many of its features missing, it left a bad taste in the mouth of all who played it, and more importantly, those that didn't. Because even though a lot of people had almost no problem with Stadia's lag, myself included with the right sort of game, plenty of people did. And of course, those were the reviews that everyone liked to share, especially this one.
Here is my Google Stadia review in one GIF. This is on the Washington Post's Gigabit Ethernet last week.
And the problems just didn't stop here. Imagine paying $129.99 for a free service in order to be one of the first to have a go on launch, and then imagine your frustration when, like me, you got the controller, but unlike me, Google was late on sending out the code needed to actually activate this thing. The whole thing was a massive shambles. Releasing a new console, or in this case Google's answer to a new console, is no easy task, and Google were just doing what Google does best. Can you imagine if Sony did this? Offered a free system and then charged the hardcore fans to use that free system and only gave 15% of the features promised in a previous state of play? they would get completely obliterated, and that exact thing was happening to Google. Sure, this fix-it-as-you-go-along approach sometimes works for Google-related services, some of which turn into incredibly unique and super helpful resources. But this isn't Google Earth, something that you can slowly add features to until it becomes truly remarkable. This is, again, for all intents and purposes, a console launch that Google half-heartedly released to paying customers that expected it to be free outside of a subscription, who then in turn told all of their friends that cloud gaming isn't all that good, when in actual fact, it was pretty good. To the right sort of gamer in the right sort of environment. If this experience had more exclusive games like GYLT, Fall Guys, Among Us, Tomb Raider, pretty much any RPG game, basically games that don't require split-second reactions, and more importantly, they did offer these experiences with some kind of Netflix-like subscription service instead of asking people to buy each one individually on top of all of the features they promised, then we could have had something truly special here that may have just been the perfect stepping stone into a more competitive gaming landscape several years into the future. This may sound like a lot to ask, an almost unrealistic amount to ask, but hey, this is Google. If they can't do it, who can? Hey, don't go away. Turn it back on. Because, well, it gets a whole lot worse from here on out. However, before we do continue on with the video, I just want to say that my analytics show that simply asking people to subscribe, hit the bell, perhaps leave a comment or share it with friends on Discord, WhatsApp, Reddit, or wherever, these sort of things really do help videos do better in Google's algorithm. If you like what I do, simply clicking that subscribe or the like button if you are already a subscriber really does help a video like this get into the eye lobes of more people, and I can't thank you enough for doing that exact thing. And for all of you people out there that have been enjoying the t-shirt here from Vapor95, you can go and get yourself a whole range of awesome Vapor95 t-shirts just like this one by going to the link below with code SlopesGameRoom15. Of course, by doing so, not only will you look as suave and sexy as me, but you'll also be supporting the channel too. Anyway, thanks for listening, let's crack on with the video. As time went on, the impressions on Google Stadia didn't change all that much. My 3-month Pro subscription ended and I didn't renew it, simply because nothing else interested me. I didn't need it to play the game, the one game I'd already purchased, so what's the point? In fact, the only other times I ever did renew my Pro subscription was when Google would send out emails offering me and others free Founders Packs in exchange for 1 month of Stadia Pro. And as much as I think Google Stadia is an under-average waste of time, $10 for a Chromecast Ultra is a seriously good deal. Plus, if you can get yourself a Google Stadia controller for $5, $10, possibly $15, it's a pretty good solution for Steam and emulated wired PC gaming. Loads of people did this, and that's why you can find Stadia controllers filling up eBay and then some. All without the Chromecast Ultra, of course. Let me know down below if you are one of the people that did this too. Every time this happened, I would look around the Google Stadia store for something that would entice me back in, and pretty much always found nothing. Besides Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle, which was a really good and underrated game, I might add. Obviously I got this one for my Pac-Man Complete History video, but yeah, besides that, nothing. So in short, Stadia simply didn't have enough exciting exclusives, and the exclusives they did have were all budget titles from third-party studios. Not one killer app existed. Its promised features were extremely late and in some cases never materialized at all, and its main focus was competitive gaming through the lens of a compressed video feed. That sucked. The half-baked soft launch killed the system, the promotion was terrible and incredibly infrequent. For every failed attempt, you had tens, possibly hundreds of articles reminding you that this thing was a massive failure, all the way through 2020. And that continued into 2021. Like for instance, in January, Enemy perfectly put it like this.
Join Stadia Pro now for £9 a month and you'll have your pick of 29 free games. While that includes new releases like the deliciously grim Little Nightmares 2, compare that with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Though more expensive, the Ultimate Pass currently costs £11. It includes the £7 Xbox Live Gold charge plus EA Play, recommended retail price £5, and your pick of 512 games. And that also includes free day one access to Microsoft first-party games too.
In February, Phil Harrison confirmed that the company was shutting down all of its internal studios and would continue to focus solely on third-party games. Then later that same month, Kotaku reached out to the game developers who worked at said studio, who went into detail about the oh-so-apparent mismanagement of Google Stadia, being told 1 week earlier that the studio has made great progress building a diverse and talented team and established a strong lineup of Stadia exclusive games, before suddenly shutting the whole thing down and kicking 150 plus devs to the curb, even though they had been promised a 4-year turnaround to actually make the games. Who knows how many unsuccessful, half-finished video games simply just got put in the recycle bin.
Are you sure you want to permanently delete this folder?
Yeah, why not? This news was extra painful when reports came out that Google Stadia had paid upwards of $10 million to Take-Two for games like Red Dead Redemption 2, and then upwards of $20 million for Ubisoft's involvement too. Bloomberg reported after speaking to nameless studio employees that the company had missed its targets for sales of controllers and monthly active users by hundreds of thousands. Heck, even positive news posts from Stadia themselves resulted in them looking foolish and completely lost in the gaming space. Take this blog post from April, for example, where Google excitedly announced that the store will finally soon have a search function. Yep, before this point, you literally had to scroll and scroll and scroll in order to find a game you wanted to play. Andrew Sprinks, the creator of Terraria, who was reportedly working on a port of the classic game to Stadia, had his Gmail and YouTube channel locked down due to violating some kind of terms of service with no explanation given, and after weeks and weeks of trying to get hold of someone at Google with no luck, in a fit of rage, he decided to not release his game on the platform too, although he did eventually change his mind on that one. Look, what I'm trying to say is that all news became bad news for Google Stadia. You'd only have to go a month or two before you saw something in your newsfeed that was yet again another nail in the coffin for Google Stadia. By this point, even though the service had ironed out a huge amount of its issues from launch, and it did have a small but loyal fan base, Google Stadia had become a joke, which of course resulted in that final statement on the 29th of September 2022, where they finally admitted that it was all over. Now, let's be real here, guys. It's fair to look back at the negatives, but there was some positives to Google Stadia. Positives because it was without a doubt a well-respected streaming service towards the end of its life to some loyal people. Positive because it did at least offer us 5 exclusive games. Positive because it did, for a short while before its launch, shake up the gaming space, and most importantly, for those that actually played games on Stadia regularly with the perfect internet connection and perfect setup, it offered an enjoyable gaming experience. Especially with Cyberpunk 2077. Remember all the hate that game got upon release, being a broken and buggy mess on PC, Xbox and PlayStation? Well, turns out it was Stadia that had the best version of that game. It really is easier to find a positive article or YouTube reviewer talking about Google Stadia than you may think. However, sadly, the negatives far outweigh those small amounts of positives that Google Stadia did bring to the table. Not only because of everything I just mentioned in this video, but also because of the way they are now leaving us. This is so bad, and it's, I don't think, ever happened before on this scale. Since the failure of this system, it's been reported that an exclusive follow-up to Death Stranding, which may have just been a Stadia exclusive, has of course now been cancelled, rumoured to have moved over to Microsoft in case you're worried. However, smaller game developers who were creating games for the system may not have been quite so lucky, as within only a day of this post going live and the store completely vanishing without warning, developers working on Stadia games started tweeting that they had no idea that this was happening, and some of those studios may even get shut down because of this if they don't find a publisher quick. Wired Productions, good friends of the channel, tweeted earlier that day teasing something Stadia related, barely 30 minutes before Stadia decided to shut the whole thing down. As did PlayOn, who promoted the release of the fantastic Hot Wheels Unleashed video game, landing on Stadia a mere 3.5 hours before Google ripped the store down.
I really hope Google told you about their announcement.
Nope. And it doesn't just stop with game developers outside the company, as a last-minute email went out to top engineers within Google working on Stadia, informing them of the termination of the service a mere 3 hours before the public did. But hey, that's how Google does things, right? Try something quietly, slowly fix it over time, and hey, if it doesn't work, quickly turn off the plug faster than your dad when he gets his electric bill in. All of this makes Stadia the 274th service offered by Google to receive the electric chair treatment. And you know what sucks? Google Stadia did work for a small but very loyal fan base. It had the ability to be the next big thing. Google is one of the most powerful and richest companies in the world. Sure, it was their first proper go at releasing a quote-unquote console, but they had an entire gaming platform at their fingertips with YouTube Gaming to promote this thing, let alone stream onto it. One of Twitch's best features over Google Live is the ability to interact with your audience. Stadia not only promised features that would fight this, but it had the ability to completely demolish it. The user base of hardcore, casual, and every other type of gamer was within Google's grasp, and they simply didn't tap into it. That feature of clicking on a game you like the look of and within 5 seconds actually playing it on any controller you prefer, imagine how powerful that would have been during an online E3-like presentation. It would have completely revived the convention circuit, allowing for futuristic virtual convention experiences. It could have been the future, and it's something that only Google could have offered. That is, unless this was all a massive lie, of course. And if we're going to get real here, guys, two things happened over the last couple of years that really could have helped Google Stadia. As soon as the pandemic was confirmed and people were forced to stay at home, I and plenty of other YouTubers I know got bombarded with emails offering sponsorship deals for those mobile games you all love so much, for almost double the sponsorship price. Why? Because everyone was going to be at home consuming entertainment. Double that up with the crypto mining landscape ripping away powerful graphics cards and a chip shortage that made getting the latest video game consoles virtually impossible for a huge amount of people, and you're left with the textbook definition of Stadia's target market, who, let's not forget, for the most part, use Google services on a daily basis. Look, I get it. Nothing I'm saying here is easy to do. It's all well above my pay grade. But surely it's got to be easier than fighting to compete with Sony and Microsoft when they could have spent that money on creating top-tier, smaller and exclusive gaming experiences that really could have blown away the competition. Then, once that was a success, moving forward into a more competitive gaming space. But hey, I suppose soft launching a major gaming system with the majority of its features missing, hoping to fix them along the way, and, you know, if it doesn't work, quickly turning off the plug and giving everyone refunds, hoping that everyone will just forget about Google Stadia. Yeah, I suppose that works too, right? Here's to all of those game developers and gamers and people that worked at Google that got screwed over without warning by Google. And this one right here goes out to the following 5 exclusive Stadia games that, unless you already own them, you will never get the ability to do so.
Transmit the live instance from the data center to your screen faster than your eye is transmitting those images to your brain.
Yes, that quickly. And you know what else is quick? Hitting that subscribe button, the like button, leaving a comment, sharing, all that sort of stuff. Doing those sort of things really do help videos like this. So if you enjoyed this video and you want to help the channel grow, the best thing to do is to do those simple things. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. I love making these videos. This one has been so much work has gone into this one. I've had some insane late nights this week trying to work on this, and I've literally only just got this finished the day it uploaded. So yeah, it's been an insane one. It's been an insane one. But yes, guys, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all of my patrons and YouTube members that you can see on the bottom of the screen right here that support the show and allow me to make these videos every single week. With extra big shout outs going to Overjoel Zane, Sir Nilsson, the Old Man Cometh, That Gamer, Akatimo84, Atalki Teacher, the Ashen Knight, Shade Silence, John Rogers, sorry. I told you I've been working on this for ages. John Rogers, Matt Jackson, Ian Quell, Arista, Dina81, Mind of the Unsane, Vike Echo, Boots and Pup, The Sneaky Ferret, Ray Blair, Vitus Varnes, Aggro Crag, James, The Action Saxon, Christopher DeVero, Roll VP, Ashley Philpott, Jay is Manchild, Clan Bob, Mike Fallon, Nicholas Bertner, Chev Matic, Jabba Al Aiden, Benjamin Guy, Man Shovel, Aaron Gorman, Big Rico, Richard Alderjic, Shadow Dragon, Wobbles and Bean, The Wonder Ducks, Game Apologist, Dina, Lucas Softail, Intrigued Gaming, Ye Old Hamburglar, Jeff Mianowski, Solit's Captor, Rovan Army, Jeremy Rodriguez, Tim Lunn, Bran Perez, Gary Pinkett, Conrad Constantine, Andrew Dalton, Retro to Next Gen aka Lou, Todd Paul Float G, and Ryan Burford. Thank you to everyone that you see on the screen. Thank you for however you decide to support the channel, and well, thank you for watching. I love making these videos, and I love that people keep coming back to watch them. It's yeah, it's awesome. So thank you guys, and until next time, this is DJ Slope signing out, and hopefully I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.